on October the 19th, 2023. I'm Russell Young, and I'm joined today by Kale and our special guest speaker today, Balaji Sankaran, who's the GM for HDInsight. Before we hand over to Balaji though and get into HDInsight on AKS, I think we've got a couple of news announcements. Kale, did you want to kick off?
Yeah, sure. I just have one here, and I'll be honest, this is the paint's still wet on this for sure for me on Radius. So yeah, there's been an announcement about this floating around the interwebs. We have a blog post about it from Mark Russ about the Azure incubation team launching this thing called Radius, which is an application platform for the cloud. Works with different cloud providers, private clouds, all kinds of different things. I'm sure we're going to have a show just on this as this thing progresses, but it's definitely something to take a look at. I mean, we've been doing a lot of work in different areas of, application deployment, things like Dapper and all kinds of different container frameworks and different models for doing that. And from what I understand so far about Radius, this is something to kind of help in that area, right, with your application deployments, kind of a DevOps tool, so developer-focused type thing.
Yeah, I've been having a play with it. There's a GitHub code space already set up with a samples repository to get going quickly. I've had a little play. I haven't actually got to the point where I've been deploying anything. I've just been seeing what's in there. There's quite a few samples there using Dapper and so on. There's some for deploying to AWS, some for deploying to Azure. So yeah, really interested to find out more about that, and it would be good to have a deep dive on that sooner than later. The other announcement that caught my eye was around Microsoft Playwright testing, and Playwright is this kind of automated UI testing framework. So you can write UI tests and orchestrate how browsers spin up to go and run those tests and verify that your web app is working the way it should do. This is a new service that's in preview, I believe, at the moment, and yeah, it's in public preview, so you can go and play with it. But what it is, it's the kind of end-to-end piece, so you can provision compute within Azure to scale up. So you can say how many nodes you want to run in parallel and farm out your UI tests basically, so they can all run at the same time if there's no dependencies between those tests, and you can parallelize your UI testing. So quite keen to see the uptake of that and how that works as well. I think that'll be of interest to a lot of people that do an awful lot of this UI testing stuff. It's been a little bit of a gap in Microsoft first-party tooling of late. The last announcement was the managing your big data needs within HDInsight on AKS, and those things are all, HDInsight's a bit of a mystery to me. Big data's always been a bit of a mystery as well. So I'm really pleased to say hello to Balaji, and if you could introduce yourself, what your role within Microsoft is, and yeah, we'll dive in on the HDInsight on AKS topic.
Hey, thanks, Russell. Thanks, Kale, for having me. Hey, I'm Balaji. I'm General Manager HDInsight. We're the big data team within Azure Data, and we do everything that's related to open source big data. That's what we're known for. We've been HDInsight is a well-adopted, long-running Azure service. It's been around for more than 8 years, and customers around the globe use us for their big data needs when they're looking for open source workloads, right? So I'm excited to be here and talk about HDInsight on AKS, which is our shiny new offering, a new version of big data analytics on top of Azure Kubernetes service, and we've been having this in the private preview for the past 6 months. We had a ton of positive customer feedback, and now we're launching this in public preview so that anyone who's looking to modernize their analytics on open source could take advantage of it and make good use of this. Yeah. So thanks, Russell and Kale, for having me on.
Good to hear from you. So is this a brand new thing, or is it an updated or a wrapped up version of something, a capability that was already there before?
So it's a bit of both, right? So it is a brand new service with 2 new workloads, Flink and Trino, right? So HDInsight is made up of open source software for analytics. So In the previous version, we had Apache Spark, Hive, Kafka, and HBase, and so on. In the newer version, what we've done is we've added two new workloads, Flink and Trino. Flink is the gold standard in community for streaming analytics. It's very popular. It's growing in adoption in the community. Developers love it, and that's a brand new addition to HDInsight portfolio. The second one is Trino. Trino is the federated query engine of choice. So typically, as enterprises grow, they have a whole bunch of different data sources. What Trino does is it allows you to run federated query across a variety of sources. So it's used for ad hoc analytics or decision support systems, right? So that's what Trino does, and those two are brand new workloads. So what has not changed is Apache Spark is the gold standard for machine learning and batch processing of data. So that was carried over from the HDInsight on VM version to the HDInsight on AKS version as well. So we're adding two new workloads. We are bringing HDInsight on Spark on HDInsight on AKS in the AKS form factor. So that's what is like this, what's new and what's the same, right? So that's at the workload level. And then obviously the name literally says HDInsight on AKS. So we've completely re-architected this on Kubernetes infrastructure. So it's very common for cloud scale application, be it in analytics or elsewhere, to leverage Azure Kubernetes service for their container needs. And we're doing that same thing, right? So we built our infrastructure on top of Azure Kubernetes service that makes dramatic improvements in terms of performance, reliability, and scale out, and so on and so forth. So that's brand new, which is re-architecture. And we have a whole bunch of improvements under the hood, but at a high level, this is what's new and what stayed the same from the previous version. Yeah.
Okay, that it sounds interesting. I mean, AKS has got a bit of a reputation for being quite complicated from a developer perspective, anyway, in terms of setting it up and configuring it and so on. How well have you integrated with the services and the portal and stuff like that? How easy is it for somebody to get going with it and get up and running?
So that's the beauty of this, right? So this whole infrastructure layer is abstracted from the end user. So you don't have to, when you're using HDInsight on AKS as a user, you don't have to worry about, hey, how does the AKS version upgrade work? And, are we keeping it current and modern and, and so on and so forth. So as a managed service, we take care of the entire aspects of the infrastructure layer. And by design, we kind of, ensure that those controls are not exposed to the user, right? Because they don't have to get bothered about it. So to your point, Rizal, one of the biggest barriers in adoption is having the expertise to manage it, operate it, and maintain it, which is where my team comes in. That we do the hard yards for the customers, so that they don't have to bother about the underlying infrastructure, and they can focus on building the applications and the all the data end-to-end architecture using our service. Yeah.
So along with that, then making it super easy to deploy is awesome. Like that's great, and they can focus on the business value and those kind of things, what they want to build. I guess the question is, once it is deployed, is they still have access to all those bits, so they can still go see all that kind of stuff from the AKS layer, or is that kind of like shielded away from them too? Like, is it? I don't understand where the managed service is there. Yeah.
Yeah, so basically, all the CRUD operations, we provide endpoints for you to do it. So you could use a API or an SDK or even command line for that instance and the portal. So these are all manifested in typical end user interfaces, which the developers love and are familiar with, right? So you have the access to the right amount of control and visibility without having to pry deep into the underlying infrastructural elements, right? Which honestly is not anybody's fancy at this point.
So in terms of getting started then, where do I go? Do I go to the portal first? Or can I go to the portal and turn it on there?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great question. So what we've done is, we've kind of built everything on top of Azure portal. So for you, for a user like you, if you want to take it for a spin, what it means is we're consistent with the Azure design language. So there's like literally there's no learning curve in terms of how do you manage and operate. And you go to the portal, you can spin up a cluster, and then you can monitor using the same portal experience, right? So one of the things those who are very familiar with the data ecosystem will be aware that the previous version of HDInsight uses Ambari, which is a popular management, open source toolkit. But Ambari is going out of community support. So what you've done in this version is completely removed Ambari as the management and control layer, and you built all this using native Azure services, right? So it means two things, like I mentioned. It's consistency with of experience right across what you're used to as an Azure developer, and also you get the constant updates of the various components, be it the portal and the surround services in terms of visualization control, which will be updated as we go along through Microsoft technologies, right? So you get the best of both worlds. It allows you to operate your favorite open source and leverage some of the well adopted Azure services to manage and control.
Okay, thank you. And I'm just kind of thinking about scenarios for using the service in the first instance. Why would I, as a customer, what would make me choose HDInsight on AKS versus some of the other first-party services that are out there, maybe that do similar things?
Well, that's a great question, Russell. I think customer come to us in multiple scenarios, right? The first scenario is, say, if you're a customer who's running all this analytic workloads on-prem, and trust me, there's a lot of them, right? Who have like big, massive implementations which are based on open source on-prem, but it's hard for them to manage. It's hard for them to scale. It is sunk cost and so on and so forth, right? So when they come to Azure, they're looking for equivalence on the cloud, right? So they can just lift and shift and migrate. So if you're a customer who uses Spark, who uses Trino, who uses Flink, you can literally lift and shift your on-prem workloads onto cloud, and so they don't have to do a lot of retooling, rewrite of technology, of their jobs and scripts, so that they can get quickly started on the cloud, right? So they always have an option for going to the native services, right? Microsoft provides tremendous value in the native services, but then there are, once they get to the cloud, there are customers who have a multi-cloud strategy, so they want to keep their analytics stack consistent across the different clouds that they might use, right? And in that case, using open source allows them to kind of have the consistent stack across different cloud providers. So the first reason why someone would choose HDInsight is moving from on-prem to cloud. The second one is some customers, especially the digital natives and some of the tech-savvy enterprises, they have like very opinionated on the open source components they use. Like, they use Flink for streaming, they have Kafka for messaging, they have Spark for data engineering and so on. So HDInsight is the natural port of calling for those customers because they can use the tools they're familiar with. They have expertise in-house and build it, right? So that's the second category of customers. And then the third category of customers is like, people who have built products and services on cloud, and they build it using the open source stack. So these are three category of customers who come to HDInsight as a port of calling. But being a Microsoft Azure service, right? What we also do is once you started here, suppose you want to say, for example, a few months back, we had launched Fabric as a completely a new analytics offering. If you want to kind of mix and match between open source and say Fabric, we allow that to happen easily because they are essentially built by using the same components, and there's a lot of interoperability between them. So the reason why they come to HDInsight on AKS, I talked about it, and it also provides them an easy path if they want to move into a SaaS service like Fabric, because we're both Microsoft Azure data offerings. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I think that just to play back that first scenario, the on-prem to cloud move, before this service existed, am I right in thinking that they would have been running their on-prem workloads using VMs or TIN or whatever it is, and they've got HDInsight installed there as a big kind of server, and they're having to manage that, they're having to look after the operating system it's running on and all the security and all that kind of stuff. When they move now to Azure and into your service, I guess the management of that server environment has gone away because that's now done by your service. So you're not having to change your code or anything. You're lifting straight into a new hosting environment that is now scalable, resilient, and you're getting all the benefits of a managed server. Well, you've got the managed HDInsight side of it, but the AKS bit you're still having to kind of look after yourself. Is that right?
Actually, yes. So when you move from on-prem, or say you're an IaaS customer, right? You could rent VMs on Azure and do the whole thing yourself, right? But then what HDInsight does is, it like you mentioned, it takes away the overheads of management, security updates, OS updates, and so on and so forth. But the story doesn't end there, right? That's table stakes. But what we do is we have things like auto scale, right? Like, so you could literally, scale up and scale down resources based on what you need, right? And we built a whole bunch of algorithms that allow you to do that, right? You can do schedule-based auto scale, or you could do load-based auto scale, depending on what your nature of workload is. So if you're coming from say an IaaS world or an on-prem world, you provision the clusters, or you write complicated code to kind of scale it up and down and so on and so forth. All these capabilities are available out of the box here on HDInsight. And what it does is it allows you to kind of optimize your total cost of ownership. For example, if you're running test servers, when your developers go home, you might shut it down and save the cost for the rest of 16 hours of a day and so on. That adds up to a lot, right? So there's some cost optimization that we've done. Then the second part that we also do is, when we have open source, for example, Spark, right? You could have vanilla open source Spark, but across Microsoft, we have a single Spark engine, right? And Microsoft makes a ton of investments to improve the performance, right? Like take any version, and the Microsoft optimizations would typically be twice as fast, or sometimes even more fast, right? So those kind of performance optimizations and improvements that we do both at the engine level, at the infrastructure level. So all that translates into better performance, faster jobs, better SLAs, or lower cost of ownership, and so on. So we have a ton of improvements from a performance perspective. And last but not the least, Microsoft is an industry leader in terms of security and reliability and so on and so forth, right? So our teams we constantly do penetration testing. We constantly do watch out for emerging threats. We work closely with the security research community, so they give us any vulnerabilities that they uncover either in open source or in our services. We pass them ahead of time before bad actors figure them out, right? So these are a whole slew of benefits that customers can seek to get when they go through a managed service like ourselves.
Yeah, and I guess all the things like the role-based access controls, that's all baked in as well as standard. I guess it has to be across all the Azure resources when they get built. Just to take you back on the scaling, the scale up and down bit. How far does it scale down if you want it to? I mean, if you want to set it to 0, because you're not running anything overnight, for example, do you have to switch it off, or can it automatically come down to 0 through rules?
Yeah, we can see in the schedule, we've done some interesting improvements in that, right? So say, for example, like the scenario I talked about, you're doing some POCs or testing stuff, right? You have no reason for you to run it once you left the office, right? Like the dev has left the office. So you could literally send it down to 0. But then we also have a feature called graceful decommission. So what that means is, say you're leaving the office at 5 o'clock, and your job is still running, it'll basically gracefully decommission, as in it'll wait for the job to complete, and then it'll turn down the cluster, even if it takes like 5 minutes over, 10 minutes over, right? So that way, the next day when you come and inspect the results, you have the complete picture, but you've not spent the whole night running these servers without any load on them, right? So we've done a ton of improvements beyond just scale up and down, and there's a lot of science and algorithms that our teams have built, and they deliver good business value for customers and cost of ownership improvements.
Cool. And on the flip side of that, I guess when you get into work in the morning and you want to get access to your environment again, and it's spun down overnight, how quickly does it spin back up again?
It takes roughly about 5 minutes to spin it back. So and the thing about scheduled auto scale is you could schedule it saying that, hey, spin it up. I reach office at 9 o'clock, grab my coffee at my desk at 9:10. So you could spin it up at 9, so that's warm and ready for you, waiting as soon as you arrive to start the work, right? So it allows that kind of flexibility. It's not just shutting down, but also spinning it back up.
Cool, thank you. I guess the other question is really about pricing and how granular that is. I know you're not going to say how many dollars and cents it costs to run it, because that varies depending on where you are in the world. But how is the pricing model? How does that work?
So we've done
different SKUs as well. Sorry.
Yeah, we've done. See, the HDInsight pricing model was like varied across the globe, etc. Right? So and that's typical of most mature or Azure services which we've been around for a while. But in HDInsight on AKS, we've done a couple of important simplifications, right? So what we have in HDInsight is the VM is what you get from Azure. So you could pretty much pick from any of the whitelisted VMs, and they would come at the Azure price list for that region, for that SKU, right? So that's like kind of very transparent, and it's like very consistent with what rest of Azure follows. And then we have a flat fee for per compute hour. What's the IP addition? It is like 15 cents an hour and stuff like that. So it's again constant irrespective of which region you are. So what this means, Russell, is to your point, it's like wherever you are in the globe, the IP price remains the same and it's constant, irrespective of which workload you use, whether it's Spark, Trino, or Flink. And the VM prices are just a function of what Azure charges you for that reason. And then Azure is run by so many customers that it's like priced just right for that region, for that size of capacity, and so on. So we've simplified it a great deal for our customers so that the choices are simple. There's transparency in terms of what you pay for. And the other thing which I should touch upon is that all the resources that you bring in HDInsight, some of them used to come from customers provisioning, and some of them used to be bundled as a part of the service itself, and so on and so forth, right? But in HDInsight on AKS, every resource that you use comes from your own subscription. So there's like complete transparency in terms of what you use, and customers that is not only just transparent, but also allows the customers to say, hey, why are we using this component? Does it add value for me? Can you make this optional add-on, and so on and so forth, right? So we bring complete transparency and simplicity in terms of how we price this stuff.
Well, that's nice. So I guess the cost management aspect of it is also transparent as a result of that. You'll be able to see what's consuming where. Great. And sorry, I've got another quick question, Cal. I see you're going to come in, but
no worries.
Words like Flint, Trino, they're all kind of new to me. This isn't the space that I normally play in, but I have been getting involved in some recent AKS deployments and environments that are being built. And I hear words like Prometheus and Grafana and managed monitoring services and so on. How does your service play into that? And does it work in the same way? Am I able to use those services to get an overall picture of performance and things that may be causing issues, exceptions when they happen, and so on?
That's a great question, Russell. So, in fact, you read our mind. Managed Prometheus and Grafana are part of the bundle. As in, hey, if you want more granular visibility and monitoring, so you could include them as a part of your implementation, so that you could visualize what's happening in your clusters. Are there are there logs that you want to inspect and get ahead of in terms of performance or reliability? So it's pre-wired, and so you don't have to wire all this up. You just have to include this into your bundle. It's optional. You may choose to do it if you're very knowledgeable and aware of what you're doing, and then but you don't have to spend time wiring it up, right? So it's pre-wired. You could just include it in the user interface, and then you could draw the benefits like that, just like you talked about, right? So the short answer is yes, it is indeed part of the bundle.
Yeah, I just had a question there a minute ago. You were talking about VMs in different global regions and those kind of things. This when I think about this product or this offering, is this something that's like what we consider like GA? This is available in every region. What should customers expect as far as like reach, like where this is available?
So HDInsight is a service, Ring 1 service, so it's pretty much available around the globe in more than 70 regions. HDInsight on AKS is now on public preview, so it's available around 10 regions. But what's interesting is the way we built it and automated some of the stuff. The region rollouts are going to be way faster than what it is for HDInsight, right? So we are looking at days instead of months, right? That's the kind of improvements that you've done. So having said all that, as we mature to GA, we will add more and more regions. And so if a customer comes back and say, hey, it's very important for my compliance or my performance needs that you have presence in, one of the regions that we don't support today, it'd be a matter of weeks before we light it up there, right? So we have a published plan in terms of the region rollout. So it will not reach to Ring 1 levels at the time of GA, but it's not a critical blocker, because as customers adopt it and make these requests, we would be fulfilling them in double quick time.
That's great. I did notice on your the blog where you announced the release, you did a webinar, and that was back a few days ago, I think last week. Hope that went well, by the way. But I'm just wondering if you've got more of those coming up, or you've got any other resources or links that we can share with listeners as well to let them get started on the service.
Yeah, absolutely, right. So we plan to do a whole bunch of deep dives. The webinar at the launch was like covering the entire spectrum of what you offered. So what we're going to do is, and this podcast is one starting point to that, right, where we get more detailed and very specific on some of the important aspects of the product. So we'll be doing, blog posts. We'll be posting on tech community in terms of what customers can use this to build analytics software. We'll be shipping, we'll be putting out reference architecture and more detailed narratives and videos on the features as well. So yes, we have a series of community engagement that's ongoing. And going back to your point, if how do I get started? It's in public preview. So all you need to go is to Azure Marketplace, search for HDInsight on AKS. It will show up, and then you can literally get spin up a cluster in a matter of few minutes, and then you can start writing your Trino queries or PySpark jobs and so on and so forth, right? So it's as simple as that, just to get into Azure portal, pull in the subscription resources from your own subscription, get started on this. So it's very simple. We will share a bunch of links that you can potentially annotate this podcast with on short URLs to get started on HDI and EKS, the documentation, and so on and so forth.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. I haven't got any more questions. I don't know, Kale, if you got anything, or Balaji, if there's anything we've missed that you feel you want to highlight? We haven't talked about next steps actually. What's coming on your roadmap?
So we have like interesting updates coming up very shortly. Like one of the key features that we are working on right now is what we call as in-place upgrade. So for example, AKS ships a new version, or there's a minor upgrade in Spark or Flink or Trino. You don't have to break down the cluster and then rebuild it to consume these bits, right? So we're building on a kind of an auto update for minor versions. So that's coming up, which is very interesting and useful for customers. We have new workloads like Kafka that we are working on to add, because Kafka and Fling are two sides of the streaming story. So getting Kafka on AKS is one very important update that we are working on. And we are on a monthly cadence, so you can watch this space in terms of the features that we ship and how it adds value to the users, right? So a ton of improvements are coming our way in the next 2 to 4 month time frame, leading up to the GA launch.
That sounds good. Yeah, Russell, just to say thanks, Balaji, for coming on and educating our listeners on this new offering, these new features. It's been super helpful. So I appreciate the run through here of what you guys have been up to.
Thanks, Kale. Thanks, Russell, for the opportunity. Look forward to coming back to you with more news and some exciting updates as we go along this journey. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Really appreciate that insight. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.